Hello, I'm excited to be here today demonstrating a card and some techniques using a stamp from Technique Junkies called Lighthouse on Cliff. I'm also going to be using the Lighthouse sentiments. Earlier this month, I made this card. I created it using Shimmering Bliss Spray as my background, and I simply stamped the image on the Shimmering Bliss panel. And then I used the holographic mirror cardstock to be a matte. I used a sentiment from the Lighthouse sentiment set, and I also used a mirror cardstock to mat that. So today I'd like to focus on a little different technique. I want the lighthouse to be projecting a beam of light, just like a lighthouse would. I want to be able to show that the light is shining out from the lighthouse. So how would I do something like that? Well, let's look at this. I just created it using a ruler, and that was something that I traced to be a narrow beam of light. And I have, this is Simon Says stamp masking paper, and you can see how I trimmed it with a beam of light. I just made two edges and had them come together at a point where the lighthouse, top of the lighthouse would be. So I've got this mask. You can see that I was practicing my ink blending. That's why there's a little bit of ink on this mask, which is not a problem. You can use it over and over again. And if you don't have masking paper, just hang tight. I'm going to show you how to create the same effect with another method of using something that you probably have on your craft desk. I'm using some Catherine Pooler ink. I'm using the color Limoncello, and I have a finger dauber, and I'm just going to blend some ink. That's a nice beam of light, don't you think? I really like how that turned out. I'm going to go ahead and peel my mask up. I can save it and reuse it again. I'm just going to store it on a piece of scrap card base. My card base is Hammermill Copy Plus card stock. It is 100 pounds. I go and line my stamp up. It's easy to line up that beam of light with my stamp, but I am going to um, practice on a piece of acetate first, just to make sure that I have a very good position, and I am very pleased with that position. Looks like that's exactly where that beam of light is supposed to be projecting from. So I'll remove the acetate and this time stamp it on to the paper using Catherine Pooler Midnight ink, which is an archival ink. It's great for red rubber stamps. You can also use it for photopolymer, but it will stain your photopolymer stamps. All right, so there's our beautiful image. Don't you love that? That lighthouse with a little small house beside it and that deep like cliff. Okay, I grabbed a piece of card and I stamped it onto that piece of card. That way I would have two panels to work with. Now, if you do not have masking paper, there is another way to create the beam of light. Grab your Post-it notes and just use them as masking paper. I had to reposition them a couple times to get the right angle of this beam of light, but honestly, this card turned out great using the Post-it notes as a mask. You can lift them up, move them around, and reposition them until you get just the right effect. I have this finger dauber and it's got Tiara ink from Catherine Pooler. I'm going to grab a little bit more ink. And I just fill in that light beam with that yellow ink. I just adjust it a little bit here at the end just to make sure it looks like a beam of light coming out of the lighthouse. It is a fantastic stamp, and this was very easy to work with and create some beautiful cards. This stamp and lots of other great stamps having to do with lighthouses and nautical themes, just so many different beautiful stamps are available at techniquejunkies.com. You can use my discount code TJ10Tracy to get 10% off your order. So this is my second panel, and I used the post-it notes to create this beam of light, and it turned out pretty good. Now I grabbed the Cloud Edger stencil. This is from A Colorful Life Designs. It is available on the Technique Junkies website. I'm using Distress Oxide inks. This color is Tumbled Glass. I'm using the finger dauber again. This gives me better control over where the ink goes as opposed to a blending brush, which is fine, but this gives me better control over these small areas that I'm trying to put these clouds in. I also have the foam blending, domed foam blending tools from scrapbook.com, but I just think the little finger daubers come in handy for something like this. With the Cloud Edger stencil, you just want to keep rotating it to get different shapes of clouds, not all the same. And you don't have to put them this close together. I was going for like a more dramatic look of the sky being, full of dark, well, not dark, but clouds. The hardest part is getting it close to the stamped image. You want to get those clouds blended but not go over top of the stamped image. But one thing that's nice about the Cloud Edger stencil, you can use it to mask off the parts that you don't want to get any ink on. So for example, I have it up here, and I did grab another color of ink to ink blend with. I grabbed the new color, Prize Ribbon. So I'm using tumbled glass and Prize Ribbon. I don't know why I called it broken glass. I think I was confusing it with broken china, which is actually a nice color too of Distress Oxide inks, but this is not the color that I have. I have the tumbled glass. I just think using this post-it note was a good idea. If you don't have the Cloud Edger stencil, you can use any type of cloud. You can even cut a cloud out with your, cardstock and just use that as a stencil. But I do recommend this Cloud Edger stencil. Everybody that has it loves it. Okay, next I'm going to use my colored pencils. These are from Arteza. And I'm going to color in light at the top of the lighthouse. I'm going to color in some water, which would represent the ocean. I'll go ahead and also color in the cliff and the little small house beside the lighthouse. This paper that I'm using from Hammer Mill, it does really nice with colored pencils, but I do use Gamsol, which is an odorless mineral spirit, and these little blending stumps, which are basically rolled up paper. I use them to basically soften that line of your colored pencil so it blends a little bit and it's not a harsh line. It's a great product. If you use colored pencils a lot, I would definitely recommend getting some and trying it. And it really does help my um, coloring when I'm using colored pencils. All right, I'm grabbing a grayish green pencil. I'm going to fill in the rock cliff area. It's definitely a rocky cliff. Okay, so while I'm coloring the rest of this, I wanted to let you know that in the description box below this video, you'll find a link to my discount code. You can use it to save 10% off your order at Technique Junkies, and that is TJ10 Tracy. That's my code. Also, you'll see that there will be a supply list and a link to my blog. So I thought my camera was running when I made this second panel with the clouds, but it wasn't. But basically, I used the cloud edger stencil and some gray ink. I used some Altenew dye-based gray ink, and I just used a solid color of the same color for these clouds. So with my blue clouds, I was using two different color of inks. For my gray clouds, I was using just all gray inks. And so with my gray clouds, I was just trying to get that look of fog. For my coloring, I'm basically using the same colors that I used on the previous card panel. The grayish green for the rocks, some blues for the water. The little house that sits on the hill by the lighthouse is brown with a red roof. And the lighthouse itself, I just put a little bit of gray, but I wanted to keep it mostly looking white. Okay, now that I have both of my panels completed, let's move on to creating the final card. This holographic mirror cardstock comes from Michaels, and it's a small 6x6 pad. Alright, now I'm going to layer the panel that I colored right on top of that card stock, trying to get my image straight. And for the sake of time, I did speed this up quite dramatically, but I'm basically just putting the final touches on my cards. I'm going to have some still photos here so that you can get a better look at how they were completed. The one with the blue clouds, I used a blue foil card for the mat behind the sentiment. The sentiment is, you have the most amazing ability to take the most ordinary moment and make it shine. I did blend a little bit of blue ink around the edges, and then I used the holographic mirror cardstock for the base of the panel that I created my scene on. And then I adhered this to a black card base. And my second card has the gray clouds, and I used the holographic card mirror card to create a background mat that I cut with a rectangle stitch edged frame, layered our decorated panel on top, then used the same holographic mirror card for the mat that is behind the sentiment. The sentiment is, let light shine out of the darkness. And that completes both of my cards. This is my third card that I talked about in the beginning of the video. Thanks so much for watching. Don't forget to thumbs up and leave a comment. I love reading all your comments. If you're new to my channel, I'd love it if you would subscribe and ring the bell so that you're notified of all my future videos. Don't forget to use my coupon code as you shop at Technique Junkies for all your goodies. Have a hopeful day. Bye bye.